It's been said that bad choices make good stories. I'm sure you've had some bad choices in your life. I know I've had them in mine, and we're going to talk all about storytelling and the art of sales and speaking today. Welcome to another episode of The Good, Bad, and Ugly of Business. I'm your host, Catryn Becker, and on this podcast, we talk to all sorts of amazing, successful people because we want to learn what they have learned in their career that has made them so successful. Because we all know that behind every successful person, there is a mountain of learnings and failures and mistakes and wrong turns and dead ends. But we can learn through their eyes and their stories. Do you see what I did there with stories? So that we can learn from them and we can grow faster together. My guest today has had an incredible career of bringing the art of storytelling into how we speak so that we can connect deeper to one another, because that's where the real magic is. He is the founder of a company called Speaking CPR. Michael Davis, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Catryn. Always love to talk stories, experiences, and bad choices that create great stories.
It's so true. It's so true. I am so glad that you're here because this is such an important part. And I think it's really, really relevant with AI, because AI can't tell the stories that we can tell. No one knows our experiences the way that we do. And so that's something that, from the research that I've done on you, seems like is such a cornerstone of the work that you do. But tell everyone a little bit more about Speaking CPR.
Well, you said something important there. AI cannot tell your story. Guess what? Neither can your competitor.
Hmm.
If you're in sales, leadership, trying to attract the best talent, you have a lot of competitors when it comes to product, price, availability, et cetera, but no one has your specific stories. And that's what my company does. I started this to help speakers, leaders, professionals become more effective communicators. I find more and more that the biggest problem in all business always goes back to communication.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I help people do is create crystal clear messages and deliver them authentically so that they can stand out, whether it's in sales, leadership, speaking opportunities, because it is the one tool we have that no one can duplicate.
Oh, I love that so much. And authenticity and the authentic story, I think, is such a key point um, to what you said there, because just because someone can tell a story doesn't mean it's the right story. In fact, there's a comic called Nate Bargatze. Are you familiar with
I
him?
sure am. Yeah.
I just love his delivery and storytelling. And I caught a YouTube short, I think, where he was at like the Comedy Hall of Fame somewhere, and they have this interactive experience where they have all of these like really famous like comedic sets, from like Seinfeld and Rodney Dangerfield and Larry the Cable Guy, like really well-known things. And it's set up like karaoke style.
Mhm.
So you get up there and it's already written out for you, and you get to experience delivering it. And even these like really experienced comics getting up there trying to deliver someone else's story, in the form of their comedy, it just didn't land.
No, it doesn't. Telling someone else's story is not going to be as impactful. It's like American Idol, America's Got Talent, The Voice, whatever. It's like karaoke. You may be
Mhm.
really good at it, but there's a reason you're not making the money the original artist is.
Mm,
It's their story, their song, their lyrics. And
mm.
if you're watching this or listening to this right now, you've got those kind of experiences that other people need to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we've all gone through something. Everyone has experienced, the good, bad, and ugly of their life.
Absolutely. Here's the other thing, Catryn, that one of the biggest myths that people come to me with is, well, Michael, I haven't done anything newsworthy or noteworthy. They haven't won the gold medals, climbed the mountains, gone to the bottom of the ocean, you name it. Well, guess what? Neither have most other people. I love a compelling story about somebody going to one of the K2 or Everest or one of the top mountains, but I can't relate to it
Yeah.
unless that speaker is astute enough to go find a lesson that translates to everyday life. But you and I were talking before you turned the record button on about going out one day getting a text that says your power's out. So instead of losing your mind and getting all upset, you contacted a friend and said, hey, can we have breakfast?
Mm-hmm.
And you had a nice breakfast, right?
I
And by
did. I
the
had the
time it
best
was
time.
over, you got the message the power was back on. Now, is that an earth-shattering, newsworthy story? No, but there's a lesson in there. And that is when you have an unexpected occurrence, don't lose your mind over it. Ask yourself, what can I do with this time that I now have? That I don't have to be home right now. Create a memory with a friend.
Absolutely. I always say this, to clients, family members, friends. Is there anything I can do to change the situation? No, I can't do anything about my power. So why fret about it? What can I do?
Yes. But how many times do we hear about people who have a meltdown? And it's like, you've got a choice here. And
Mm-hmm.
out of that, you create something positive. And who knows, at that meeting, you talked with your friend, reconnected with her, and she might have said, hey, I got this friend who needs to talk to you. You might create a business opportunity. You don't know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we had the most amazing server who just, his name was Shannon, and he was telling his story. Like he just showed up in such a beautiful way and was such a good server. And every time we'd ask for something, his answer was always, I'm here to serve you and help you to have a good day. Everything. Like, can I get some water? Yes, I'm here to help serve you and help you have a good day. Can we get a second plate? Yes, I'm here to serve you and help you to have a great day. And so he really touched us. And then he started sharing his stories, how he had been in jail, he had been homeless, he had served in the Navy. And I loved hearing that part second after he'd already made such a positive connection to then know what he's been through. And so that leads me to my next question. In the art of storytelling, I've heard both sides of start with a sad story to, hook the audience in, make them cry so that they'll relate to you. And then I've heard it from the other way of don't go too sad because people don't necessarily pull out their pocketbooks. No one says pocketbooks anymore. They don't pull out a credit card.
Credit card.
Yeah, they won't pull out their credit card if you make them cry. So can you kind of play devil's advocate on the two different rules of thought and kind of what your personal preference is on that?
Yes. And I tell you, I've heard that too. And the first word that comes to mind when I hear that kind of advice is manipulation.
Mm.
It is, I'm going to manipulate their tear ducts to get them on my side. Or, and it may not be the person's intent who gave that advice, but it's my initial reaction because I've seen too many speakers do it.
Sure.
Years ago, when I was an aspiring speaker, I went to a National Speakers Association meeting, and the person delivering the keynote that day, well-known, highly paid, famous speaker, and he said, if you want to get an audience and get them to buy into your idea, you got to get them laughing 1 minute and crying the next. And I thought, I'm out. I can't. Here's why. I can make people laugh, but it is not my nature. And I'm not the kind of storyteller that gets people crying.
Mm.
So that was generic advice that works for some. And one of my best friends in the speaking world and one of my mentors touches me emotionally in a way that nobody else does. Doesn't mean I'm crying, I'm in tears, but I will get tears in my eyes. And most speakers don't do that to me. He does. And I'm thinking, that's not my style. So what I have to work with people on is to find what's your personality. If you're humorous, a little sarcastic, then we're not going for tears. And you can
Mm.
still touch people at a deep level. I tell stories that touch people emotionally, but they're never crying in my audience. And they still will pursue me to do business, want me to coach them, buy a course. That's fine. But I'm doing this to get them to think differently. And I don't do it through tears. I do it more through laughter.
That's it's
I'm very cautious of this generic advice that says you have to do this or that. No, you got to be yourself, and that's your strength.
100% agree. I tend to rebel against too much standardization
Mm-hmm.
or generalities because so much of the beautiful nuance that makes us who we are gets lost when we try to fit in those molds. But I also can understand the point of sometimes you have to try it and say, okay, yeah, I can say for sure now that's not for me.
100% agree with that. In fact, we're constantly pushing our clients to get out of their comfort zone because there are ways of delivering they've never tried that taps into their true nature, but for whatever reason, fear or just never doing it, they don't do it. Now, I will tell you, 3 years ago, I would have never worn this shirt on a podcast
And
because
for
I would have felt
everyone who's listening, let's say what the shirt says.
bad choices make good stories.
There we go. The way we opened the segment, because how could I
Yes.
not?
And I've been coaching this skill for 13 years, but I wasn't being authentic. This is me. I'm a bit of a sarcastic person, not obnoxiously so. I don't think so. Maybe my partner and she may think maybe I'm obnoxious, but it's in a way to have fun and make people laugh. This is who I am. So I do this now.
Mm,
I've got other shirts. Now, why am I saying this? Because you have to trust who you are and also understand that there are people who are not going to like you.
mhm.
Just by looking at you or hearing your voice, they will not like you. And as long as you're there to be authentic, to present ideas that help others, that is not your problem. It's theirs.
Mm.
Politicians get elected, some of them not even with 50% of the vote, but half the people don't like them and they
Right.
still win office. If you're there to serve people, know that you're probably going to get most, some you won't. And here's the hardest part about giving presentations or sharing stories, Catryn, and that is you're never going to know most people whose lives you impacted,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
if you're a speaker, a leader. You're just not going to interact with them after that. Now, that's not true in sales. Uh, you'll get instant feedback on that. You'll know with those results whether you got them as clients or not. But if you're standing in front of a group, most of them are never going to come up to you and tell you. You just have to trust that you've got an impact going there.
I was meeting with someone last week and we were talking about the topic of being magnetic.
Mhm.
And it's something that I think about a lot about magnetism and, drawing people in. And she said something really profound, and that was, well, magnets have a positive and a negative. So of course you're going to draw some people in, but you're going to repel the heck out of some others because
Yeah,
they're not
that's a
meant for you.
great point. Yeah, I love
It
that quote.
really dawned on me, and it gave me so much more satisfaction as a recovering people pleaser. That I don't, it's not my job to make everybody happy.
No, and do you do speaking?
I've been on stages before. I
Okay.
don't necessarily consider myself a speaker per se, but I guess I don't know if this counts as being a speaker of hosting a podcast and talking a lot, but
It is a forum. I'm thinking more of an audience. And as a recovering people pleaser, if you were to stand up now and see a few people looking at their phones while you were speaking, or maybe
mm,
somebody dozing off or distracted, how do you think you'd react?
um, well, people pleaser Catryn would probably be like, oh my gosh, I'm not saying anything that's interesting. I'm losing them. I gotta shake it up, or something like that. But current form Catryn would probably be like, they could still be listening. My kids are on their phones all the time, and yet they hear everything I say.
Yes. And that's so important is that if you're listening to this and you do give presentations, even to a group of 3 or 4 people, you don't know what's going on in that person's life.
Right.
Could be a new mom who was up half the night and really loves your topic and is into what you're saying, but is so exhausted, she's falling asleep. I'm not
Yeah.
blaming her for that. Or maybe they've got a sick relative and they have to keep an eye on their phone. You don't know. Or maybe they're posting, you need to hear this speaker. This
I'm
person's
gonna,
awesome.
yes, that is gonna be my new reframe for that.
Yes.
I love
I
that.
remember, when iPhones first came out 15 years ago or so, we would get really annoyed when people pull their phones out. And then one day somebody said, no, I'm posting this. So from that day on, that became my mantra. Oh, they're posting and telling people how great I am, whether I knew or not. But it is a reframe we should have
It's a
because
great
otherwise,
reframe.
oh, you get stuck in your head and then your presentation goes off the rails because you're too worried about that one person. It's like, no, focus on the group.
Yeah, absolutely. And some people have RBH, resting B face, right? Sorry, RBF, not RBH. I
Yeah.
don't know where the H came from. But there have been times where I have been giving, speeches, and I can see everyone's faces, and some people just have like no emotion. I'm not able to read them. There's no body language to go off of. And I was like, oh, well, they're not interested. Okay, finish, reading the room. And then they'll be the ones that come up to me. They were just so into what they were hearing that
Yes,
they were completely focused. So that's another kind of mental acrobatics you have to do a little bit.
it really is. If we separate ourselves from the result and
Yeah.
know that we're there to serve and provide value, the rest will take care of itself.
Mm. Such good advice for life.
It is.
Just no matter what it is you're doing.
My son turned 29 today, and I used to tell him when he was little, when in school, look, you do the work that they give you, the grades will take care of themselves.
Mhm.
Work on the presentation. If you're in sales, rehearse that presentation, get feedback on it. You're going to get sales.
Yeah.
You do
Yeah.
the work.
Do the work. You mentioned a word earlier that, of course, when we talk about speaking and public speaking, we have to come back to, and that word is
Mhm.
fear.
Mhm.
So many people have a fear of public speaking. And I have some theories as to where that comes from. But then I was never afraid to speak and get up on stage. Doesn't mean I don't have butterflies. It doesn't mean I
Mhm.
don't get nervous because I still want to do a good job, but it's never stopped me from getting on there. Now you've got a story where you were like dead set against getting on stage and being a speaker. Can you kind of walk us through that journey that you took to go from like, never happening to us being here together today?
I'll tell you the journey, and then I'll tell you the research I've done of why we are afraid. And actually, we're not afraid of speaking. It's a different fear. But my journey started on a desk in first grade back in 1969.
You didn't have to share that, but thanks for sharing.
Well, I'll save you the math. I'm 29.
There you
I'm
go.
sorry,
Sorry.
that's my son who's 29 today. Now I'm on this desk. Now, why am I standing on a desk? Because earlier that day during indoor recess, I got bored. So I jumped up on my desk. I was kind of a ham. I like to entertain my friends. So I'm having a ball up on this desk, and my friends are laughing. They're standing around laughing. And then Mrs. North, my teacher, walked back in the room, took one look at me and said, well, Michael, since you love standing on your desk so much, I'm going to let you do it during nap time so everybody can see you.
Mm.
Okay, that might not be so bad. I get to everybody be looking at me. I can entertain them. But come nap time later that day, lights are off. You can hear the rain pelting the window. And Mrs. North says, stand up on your desk and don't you move. Don't you say a word. Don't make a sound. Now, do you think that my friends who thought I was so great hours earlier, do you think that they were sleeping?
Mm.
They were silently taunting me,
Mm.
making faces, sticking their tongue out. Oh, yeah, you're looking at them whispering, yeah, you're stupid. You look stupid. That went on for 40 minutes, Catryn.
That's a
And
long time.
all I could think was, I just want to get down. Please let me get down. I'll never be bad again.
Mm.
And when I got off that desk, Mrs. North said, I hope you've learned your lesson. And I had. I told myself, I'll never stand in front of people again. That was awful.
Mm.
And for the next 25 years, I never volunteered to stand in front of a group of any kind. And then in the ultimate irony, I become a certified financial planner, and I'm given the job, not asked, told, you're going to go give retirement planning workshops. And that was a disaster because I had forgotten about the desk incident, but it was impacting my emotions about standing in front of people. And because I was threatened with a job loss, my the workshops were terrible. I'm not exaggerating. I saw the evaluations and they were right. They were bad. So I went and I found a speaking organization, which helped me understand why I was afraid. I remembered that incident. I kind of recovered that from my memory banks. And what I discovered along the way is that we are not afraid of public speaking. What we are afraid of more than anything is public humiliation and shame.
Mhm.
We're also afraid of walking into a room full of strangers.
Yep.
Those two fears were passed down to us from our earliest ancestors. Because what happened to us if we embarrassed, brought attention to, or humiliated the tribe? We got kicked out.
Mhm.
And what happened to us back then when we got kicked out? We died.
Yeah. Certain death.
Certain death. And that also meant we might run into other tribes who we usually were not friends with, and that could be a danger. So you combine those two that have been passed down to us for thousands of years into our DNA. That's why we think we're afraid of public speaking. That's not it. It's the feelings underneath that, the potential to be embarrassed in front of a group, room full of strangers. That's why we think we're afraid of public speaking.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. Like a lot of the work that I do is around the subconscious and kind of digging into some core wounds collectively that all of us carry. And
Yes,
rejection and abandonment are two of the main five ones. And those are
those are the
exactly
two.
what you just described there. So it makes complete sense why we don't even know on our conscious mind, like, I should be able to do this. Why can't I do this? And
Yeah.
it's so many other factors at play that we have to work through to get to that point.
I used to do this exercise where I'd be sitting with a group of 8 people and I would say, just tell us your story. Give us 60 seconds. And they would tell their story and say, now stand up and tell us that exact same story. And they would hesitate. They'd look around and they'd tell the story. Then I'd say, now come to the front of the room and tell that exact same story. And Catryn, it was phenomenal. They were just, it was so different. They would stutter, they would stammer, they would get, you could just see their whole body language change.
Mm.
And I was not asking them to do anything different, but where they were in the room. It was incredible experience. And that's where I learned, okay, we got work to do with some folks before we ever get into how do you craft a story? How do you tell the story? No, we got to work on the mindset first.
Yeah, there's some fundamental foundational things that need to get set in
Yes,
place first.
absolutely.
My son's in junior high, and in junior high here, when you have meet the teacher, the kids don't go. And the whole idea is for the parents to walk their schedule, and we have like a 5-minute interaction with the teachers where they do a little presentation at the front of the room. And so, I love school. I love learning. I always have. There's something I will always pursue. My husband, not so much. And it became crystal clear when we walked into these classrooms and all of the seats are there. It's the quintessential classroom that we think of from high school and middle school.
Yeah.
And I go to sit in the front and he starts walking to the back. I was like, where are you going? He's like, oh, I always sit in the back. It's like, but she's not going to call on you. Like the reason you sit in the back is so no, the teacher doesn't call on you. Because I think it's that same sort of idea of having that sort of spotlight on you, might not knowing the answer. It's that same underlying feeling that I think people experience with, getting up on stage and
Oh,
having
yeah.
the attention on them as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you're listening to this and somebody asks you to speak, or even selling is the same way, selling is a huge potential for rejection, which taps into some deep seated feelings passed down through the generations. Remind yourself what you're feeling is normal.
Mm.
It's not okay to let it control your actions, but it's okay to feel it, experience it, and then acknowledge and say, look, this is an opportunity where you can procrastinate something. Usually we don't want to be procrastinators. This is one. Procrastinate your fear. Procrastinate not taking action because you're afraid. Just say, I'll procrastinate. I'll push it off till later. Right now, I need to take some action, talk to this prospect, go give this presentation. Then I'll feel afraid later. Just try mind games with yourself. Anything to get yourself out of that fear. By far, the best way to manage fear is to be prepared.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely.
When you know your sales presentation, you know the questions you want to ask, you know what you're going to say to this group, that takes care of 75% of it, I believe.
Yeah, it's definitely knowing the material and knowing yourself, right?
Yes. And trusting yourself.
Yeah.
Trusting that, first of all, you don't have to. This is a big one that I really have to work on with people, Catryn. It's, I want to have a perfect presentation or perfect story. No, you don't. People don't want perfection, they want connection.
Mhm.
There's no perfect human being. Don't try for it. Be yourself. If you make a mistake, don't draw attention to it. Just go through. Hey, they don't know your story. They don't know your script. They're not going to come back to you later and say, I really liked your story, Catryn, but you know that one part that you normally say that I've never heard before, you left that out. So now no, they don't say that.
Yeah, like they're sitting here reading the script and they're like, I'm on page 3, paragraph 2,
That's
you missed a
right.
sentence.
You miss a comma too. I'm just not into this. No, they don't do that. If you're engaging, if you're yourself, and trust yourself that if something goes wrong, and I promise it usually does, don't worry about it. Preparation means you can go right through it. And they like that. They like that you're like them.
Yeah.
A lot of times in speaking and selling, I hear this phrase that you want people to like you. I don't think that's as important as people feeling you're like them. You're similar. You're not trying to be better. You're not trying to impress them. You're just like them and you want to help.
That also is a good reframe from the common phrase, know, like, trust.
Yes, it is. You want them to know you and be like them. You're much more likely to have them trust you.
Absolutely. Michael, this has been so good. I really, really enjoyed this. It's been phenomenal. I just, as we're wrapping up, please tell people what's the ideal client that you work with? You know, what's the benefit from working with you? Because just hearing this conversation, I'm like, well, maybe I could use Michael. I mean, everyone can get better, right?
Yeah, I work with business leaders and sales teams, and I work individually, but the best way is with groups because I believe groups learn from one another as much as they do from me. And I'm more a facilitator, but yeah, I work with presentation skills over like keynotes, sales talks, et cetera, storytelling, and virtual presenting. If you're struggling in any one of those 3 areas, I'm happy to talk with you. By the way, I do have a new resource. It's not new. It's it's like new and improved. It's called 52 Storytelling Insights. It's a weekly 5-minute audio and a downloadable transcript. It's no cost, no obligation. I'm happy to sign your listeners up for that. If you'd like that, just shoot me an email, Michael at speakingcpr.com.
Oh, that would be really great. So it's 52, so it's like one a week for a whole year.
One a week for a whole year. And reality is there'll probably be 70 by the time I'm done putting the second version together. But hey, it's more insights.
There you go. You can't be faulted for having too much, right?
That's right.
It's all there to help us. Well, is there anything else that you would like to leave us with on speaking and crafting a story that maybe we haven't talked about yet?
Just remember that you have experiences that people can learn from. Don't try to impress. I mean, we joke about this shirt I'm wearing, bad choices make good stories, but the best stories do come from our failures, flaws, and frustrations.
Mhm.
When we can take those experiences, share them with others, and then tag on, here's the lesson I learned, and here's how it can help you. That's when people will say, that was a meaningful story to me.
Mm. I was wrapping it up, but the thought that just came to my head, I can't let it slide. And that is the premise. And if we go over, we go over. But the premise of that, so many times we avoid the obstacles in our life and try to take right or left turns. And more it's coming up for me of that the thing you desire is on the other side of the obstacle. So you have to go through it. And I think about what a gift Miss North gave you in the end to find this purpose for you.
She did. I'm so grateful for that. That happened many years ago. And when we can get to that point, not just as speakers and storytellers, but as people, we have a better perspective on life and can get a great story out of it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's, a really good takeaway for all of the listeners that the thing that you are avoiding the most might be just where the magic is.
100% agree with that.
Ah, fabulous. Michael, how can we get a hold of you? I know you shared your email, but what are some of the other resources that people can go to
Yeah,
learn more
go
about
to
you?
my website, speakingcpr.com, and you can contact me through that. It's got my phone number, my email address, and other resources you can download.
And you're pretty active on LinkedIn. You've got some great content over there, so they can contact you on LinkedIn as well.
You absolutely be happy to hook up with you on LinkedIn. I know there are no other Michael Davises in the world, so you might want to type in Michael Davis speaking CPR just in
Well,
case another one shows up.
what I'll do for you is I'll put the link in the show notes.
Oh,
How
I
about that?
appreciate that. Save people 58 steps.
On page 207, there you are. No, just kidding.
Probably
I'm
about
sure
it.
you're way up high at the top. Oh, Michael, this has been so wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time and sharing and for taking that step and having that drive and motivation internally to want to get better at something. That's really, really commendable and something that we can all emulate.
Thank you. You're a terrific host. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you, and I'm happy to come back anytime you want me to.
I would love it because I know we
Okay.
could go a lot deeper on this than we have
Yes.
today. To the listeners, thank you so much for being here. If you have not yet, please make sure to like these episodes, subscribe to the podcast so that you get notified of other amazing audience members, guests like this, because we don't want you to miss out. So make sure that you do that. And until next time, everyone, take care.